But if you think about it, you'll see everyone today is using AI in some form, right? I'm sure I used it 3 times today just before I got in this conversation with you, because AI is everywhere, right? It's chatbots, Siri on my iPhone, it's ChatGPT, it is, Google search. So the dealers, even though they don't realize it, I really think more dealers are using it in their everyday life. It's just they don't see it as much because it's so ingrained in everything they do.
Today, I'm thrilled to chat with Leigh Ann Conver, Senior Director of Data Services at CDK. We discuss 2024's hottest AI trends in automotive and reveal a surprising truth: dealers are already using AI more than they realize. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Edmunds, Dealer Pay, and CDK Global. And now, let's get into the show. Leigh Ann Conver on the CDG podcast. Leigh Ann, welcome.
Thank you, Yossi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I just told you that's Lee's my wife's name, so we share something already.
I appreciate it. Yes. Lee's have to unite.
Yeah, right. It's not a very common name, especially the spelling, Leigh, but it's good. It's unique. So
yeah, my dad's middle name is Lee, but it was Lee. So I think he tried to make, when he realized he was having a girl, he had to girlify it. So that's my story for the Leigh.
He wanted to see himself in you. That's good. I like it. Well, pumped to have you on. We're going to talk about a lot. There's this big 2-letter word, or maybe more than that, but we can consolidate it into AI. But there's a lot going on in our industry. In all seriousness, we are seeing just the impacts of AI technology over the last 12 months on dealerships and dealers. Really, I would say what's really evident is, of course, what's visible to consumers and kind of on the front end retail side, chatbots. That's the obvious, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. You've conducted a very important survey, plus just other really important research, which we're going to dig into. Talk about where dealers are now leveraging AI the most, how it's impacting dealerships, what's to come, outlooks, sentiment amongst dealers, a lot of that. So we'll kind of touch on all of it. I'm really excited to just kind of dig into your brain because, you are in this daily. And so you're very close to the pulse. Before we get into that, can you give us a quick background on yourself and, how'd you get into this? What did you do prior?
Yeah. So I have been, I got into the old automotive retail space in 1998, which, if my math is correct, that's 26 years ago. I hate to date myself, but yeah, it's been 26 years and all entirely within automotive retail data. So it's a very niche space. Doesn't make me a very popular dinner guest, but but it is good conversation for a podcast like this. So I got my start with a startup called Digital Motorworks. This was right before the internet was taken off. And what we were doing is we were providing kiosks. So the old vehicle inventory kiosk in a dealership back when you didn't have the internet to go to be able to see what are all the vehicles that are in the dealership, right? So our primary business was getting those kiosks, but we realized we needed to get the data into the kiosks. So we set up software technology that would dial, and yes, I do mean dial. We used modems at the time to be able to connect into the dealership, get the data out, at that point, the vehicle inventory data over into the kiosks. And that was a nice little business. But really where that started to grow is that we realized the act of being able to get that data out and get it in a usable format that then the dealer could use in other means was useful, not just for a kiosk, and not to mention kiosks kind of went out of the way, although I believe they're coming back now since the internet really took off and there are websites that customers went to. So we kind of doubled down on that technology of getting that dealer data out of the system, moved from just vehicle inventory to sales, service, parts, you name it. We were getting it. We were extracting it. We were collating it. We were cleansing and standardizing, and then making it available to where the dealers needed it, right? Cars.com. Way back in 1998 was one of our first clients, and we were getting the vehicle inventory data out of there. But we were getting data out, sales and service, for folks like AutoNation, or getting it for OEMs and ISVs. So we really started to, like I said, kiosks were great, but really where we saw the fundamental need and shift was to be getting that data in and out of the system. And that's the other area where it kind of grew. Originally, it was just getting data out. But as we started to branch out, there's really information that needs to get into the system. So that's what I've been doing. Involved. I got bought out by ADP. ADP got pushed out to CDK. So it's all been within the same kind of company, but many different jobs, but all focused on data in the retail automotive space.
What's happening now? Can you, before we even talk about your latest findings, insights with respect to AI in our automotive retail space, what are you just hearing on the ground floor, right? What's sentiment like when it comes to all the shifts that are happening in our industry?
Yeah, and they're great, right? I mean, you're living through them. Your listeners have been living through it. I mean, this is an exciting time to be alive. To think of when I started modems to now going to AI and APIs, it is just a monumental shift. A lot of times, so I do think the automotive retail space has been a little lagging from the grander kind of technology industry, but I think we're really full force. Dealers are recognizing it. And it's a lot of recognizing that the technology is there. The technology is very helpful, but technology for technology's sake isn't what they're looking for. They're really looking for, how is this piece of software? How is this piece of data analytics? How is this AI going to solve my real world problem? Not just, hey, I need to do this new technology to do this new technology. So we're hearing a lot of that, which is, here are my problems. How can technology solve them?
Mm-hmm. And now take us one layer deeper in your, so you ran your 2024 AI survey. Before we dive into the specifics, can you just explain what was the general overview that, with the general insight that you gleaned from this survey? I know, by the way, I know that's a very fully loaded question because I'm sure there's a lot of insights. I'm looking at parts of it right now, but I want to take it step by step and understand, to frame it properly, understand, what's the general overview.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like I said, this is the third time we've done it. So we learn something a little different and the sentiment changes each time. But what we're hearing is it is just greater adoption of AI. But what was a little surprising to me that came out of this latest study is one of the simplest things we asked was just, how many of you are getting value out of it? How many are using it and seeing value out of it? And this time, I believe we had a response where 65% of the dealer leaders say, we're using AI, we're getting value out of it. And what was surprising to me is that number was actually higher the last time we surveyed. I believe it was about 74%. And so it seemed a little counterintuitive to me, right? The dealers are using more of the AI. Why is that number getting lower? And when we dig into it, a lot of it is, part of it's just built into the Gartner hype cycle, where we are in AI. So I mentioned we've kind of adopted, people are adopting it, they're getting their hands on it now. And back to technology for technology's sake, AI is no longer that shiny new object in automotive. The dealers are really expecting for that AI to bring them, solve them problems. Where originally it was just, hey, it's AI, I need to be using AI. I get that. So we're really seeing that as they start to get their hands on it, if it's not the type of AI that really solves their problems and fits their needs, that there's a bit of dissatisfaction.
When you mentioned using it, what are the most common ways it's being used right now?
So chatbot is a big thing, but we're also using, we lump AI into this big AI conversation, but you have machine learning, ML, you have NLP, which is natural language processing. You have a lot of needs, and the chatbot, going back to that shiny object, it's the chatbot. Chatbots are being used all over, varying degrees of success. But then there's also more where we're doing modeling. We do a lot of predictive analytics in this space with ML, being able to use that data. And that is one of the comments that came up in the survey when it came to the dissatisfaction is, if you think about, you've been in this space for a while, I know your listeners have been in this space for a while, you really need to understand the automotive space and automotive data. Just copying a chatbot from some other industry over into our industry is not going to solve their problems. So where they're really pushing back is to say, we need to make sure the data is automotive retail data. Yes, we can get more customer data, generic data, but we're hearing, and this is where CDK is really pushing all of its strategy, is it always starts with the data, right? You have to have the data. You have to ensure that it's the right data. You've got the governance on top of it, or you're using it responsibly. You got to use it to solve like the dealer problems. I keep saying that that's really what's about the dealer problems. The other part with the dissatisfaction that's come into with that survey is just having an AI tool. If it's sitting off on its own and it's not incorporated into the workflow, it's really hard for a dealer to then adopt it, have its employees adopt it.
Yeah, can you explain that a little further? Because again, I'm reading through some of the parts of the study as you're speaking, and I see stuff like asking your AI assistant for insights, predicting sales forecasts. I want to understand better, like, is this actively being used within dealerships right now? Right? Because this is very back office type of stuff. This is not front end like chatbot, right? Asking my AI assistant for insights, predicting sales forecasts. Is this being used actively today within dealerships? And if so, how is it being used?
It is. And one of the things, like we know it's being used kind of the chatbots with the customer. We think that's kind of like front office. But one of the items, and I think it came in from a different survey we do, where a lot of the dealers are saying they're having problems finding and training and keeping the right people at their dealership, right? I'm sure you've heard that. I'm sure other people have heard that. This is one of those areas where AI is specifically being used to assist it. So let's think of our virtual assistant. We call it Ava, a artificial intelligence virtual assistant, short for Ava. We use Ava. Our dealers are using Ava in the service department, so it actually answers the phones 24/7. So that's an example where if your dealership, you've got your employees, but maybe you lose one, or maybe you're doing great and you're getting more business, but you need someone to be able to pick up the phone and create those appointments. Where they're able to use that virtual assistant to augment who they already have is that Ava pick up the phone. And what Ava can do that I know I can't do, which I think most people do, she can't do, that Ava can talk in 54 different languages. So no matter who's calling, where they are, they're able to engage with that customer and set up that appointment. So that's an example of where it looks just like a chatbot, but it really is helping kind of the dealership bottom line because they're able to augment that staff. Another example where when we think about that employee shortage or the lack of people being able to really address kind of real world dealership problems because they may be coming from somewhere else and maybe coming just right out of school is something like that predictive service. So what you can do with predictive service, this isn't a chatbot, it's that machine learning. We're analyzing all the data to be able to determine, okay, here's the customer coming in for her service. Here's the type of car she has. Here's the service she has had. Here's the type of service every other vehicle like hers at this type of mileage has. You should be selling this particular service because that's the one she's most likely to buy, right? So things that is a lot of tribal knowledge in our industry. We would know, what's there, but this is where we're able to don't need to rely on someone coming out of school to do
like
it.
Predictive.
You've got the data so you can do it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, like, how is that working? How is it converting?
Yeah. So we have one dealer that is using that predictive service, and I don't have the stat off my top of my head, but I think it's something about 20% increase in operations that they were sold in the service bay once they implemented that predictive service, right? So it's got that intelligence built in. It's helping, and it's helping the customer too, because a lot of what we really focus on, especially in service at CDK, is that transparency, which is, hey, here's what we're seeing. We're not just saying just buy this service to buy this service, but it's really fact-based, database. Here's what we feel is going to be necessary for your vehicle.
This episode is brought to you by Edmunds. In today's automotive landscape, car buyers invest more time than ever in researching, considering, and comparing options. But for dealers, the challenge lies in pinpointing the audience ready to make a purchase. Enter Premier by Edmunds. Premier offers dealers a groundbreaking way to connect with in-market car shoppers precisely when, where, and how they prefer. With over 20 million monthly visits, Edmunds.com is the go-to destination for buyers seeking market insights, expert advice, and budget tools to make informed decisions. These shoppers aren't just informed, they're laser-focused on the exact car they want. Now, it's your chance to make that connection. Through Edmunds Premier, dealers gain access to this highly coveted audience. Simply list your new and used inventory on Edmunds and watch as qualified in-market traffic flows directly to your vehicle detail pages on your website. Don't miss out on this opportunity to elevate your dealership's visibility and sales performance. You can sign up for Premier today at edmunds.com/CDG. Again, visit edmunds.com/CDG or click the link in the show notes below.
I want to ask you a different question. Again, going through the report here in real time. When you say, so there's a stat here that says that 68% of dealerships using AI have already seen a positive impact? Right? Are dealers being more? Have they clarified? Are they being specific? Right? Is this back office improvements? Is it cost efficiencies? Right? Are we, are we improving how many sales a salesperson can do per month, or is the admin able to process, or the receptionist being able to, go through, 2 times as many calls? Like, do we know what's that positive impact that 68% of dealers are claiming to be seeing?
Yeah, and we do, and it is all the sets are in there in the survey. But I think the reason why it's a little hard just to give one kind of answer is because AI is used so differently across all of the different areas. Like I had mentioned, using Ava to be able to create those appointments. In that scenario, you've got one where you're doing a cost saving because you're not having to hire as many people. You're also not having to use kind of external BDC, so you've got the cost saving. But it also is increasing profitability, because when you have that automated Ava taking the call, the dealers are actually seeing an increase in service appointments made. And obviously, an increase in service appointments means an increase in repair order business. So that's just some of the examples. On the sales side, we have Ava will do the automated lead management. We also have, or similar to predictive service, we use machine learning to be able to implement what we call propensity to buy, as well as suggested vehicle. So you come into the dealership, you're a lead, we're mining that data, we're doing the machine learning to determine, yep, you're 70% likely to buy, or you're 20% likely to buy. So you're focusing those efforts on there, which means you're increasing your lead dollars off of that. So it really runs the gamut from cost savings to increased revenue to increased profitability, just based on where it's being implemented and how it's being implemented.
Mm-hmm. Now explain to me dealers that, because another significant chunk here of dealer surveys said that they are not using AI, but still expected to benefit their operations. Why is that? Like, what's sentiment on the street about that?
Yeah, what's interesting, I think there was a stat there that said only 40% of the dealers feel like very or extremely familiar with AI, and that one I kind of understand it and I kind of don't understand it, because I think what's happening is, once again, we think of AI as this big thing, like, oh, here I have AI in my dealership, and if you think about it that way, I get how someone could say only 40% of them think, yes, here's my AI tool. My AI tool is doing great. But if you think about it, Yossi, everyone today is using AI in some form, right? I'm sure I used it 3 times today just before I got in this conversation with you, because AI is everywhere, right? It's chatbot, Siri on my iPhone, it's ChatGPT, it is, Google search. So the dealers, even though they don't realize it, I really think more dealers are using it in their everyday life. It's just they don't see it as much because it's so ingrained in everything they do. But when it comes to, like I say, a specific, here's my AI tool that I'm using, that's, I think, where they're not as many are really, yep, this is my AI tool. But another thing we found is, I work on the Fortellis side, where we have both an API and an app marketplace. We found that 35% of the apps in our marketplace, so the apps are what the dealers are using to extend the value of their ecosystem, 35% of them are using AI, and a dealer may not recognize it. Hey, that's really an AI tool, but they're all using AI. And even more important, 50% of the subscriptions. So if you think 30% is just the sheer number, the ones that are being used the most, 50% of them have AI. So once again, I think dealers are using AI more than they actually realize, than at least what our survey shows.
If I'm in the industry and I don't care about this AI stuff, I just want to sell cars or I want to service them, right? What would you say is the most pressing things that I may be missing, right? What are those specific issues that, can be solved? And right, if I'm, I don't want to say a Luddite, but if I'm really like, okay, this is all just too confusing for me. Like, what's the kind of like the table stakes stuff in your mind?
Yeah, when I think of table stakes, and also totally recognize dealers, some tech savvy, some not so tech savvy. I always talk about my dad from South Dakota, the dealership he has. They're not going to, in their mind, they're not going to say, I'm going to get an AI tool, but it can still help
there's
them,
such a
right?
big variance. Like I speak with dealers,
Huge.
some conversations. And people like, they talk to me about tech stacks. And I'm like, what? Like I would have never expected to have a conversation with that with a dealer, 10 years ago even. But on the other hand, there's dealers that are just, they have great people on their team that maybe are experts at it. It's not them, but there's definitely a very wide variance. Our business has become, I mean, if you think about it, even way before my time in the industry, but it was way different. I just had a conversation with Liza Borges from Carter Myers, and she said something very interesting. She said that, if you think about the last 2 decades or so, we've tacked on so much technology, BDCs, marketing, SEM, SEO, da 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 da. But margins haven't improved. I'm not referring to like inflations and like absolute numbers. I'm saying like margins for the most part haven't improved. If anything, they've eroded. So things have gotten more complicated. And, being a successful dealer, right? Obviously, our conversation here has gone way beyond just slinging the next car, servicing it as well. It's technology. I mean, it just obviously makes or breaks you. So I try to put myself in a position of all people. And I ask myself, how do I distill this down to the simplest way possible? And, what is that next step? Right? Because it's a lot. It's going to impact the dealership in so many ways. But what is that one next step that someone can take? That one next, challenge they can solve?
Yeah. And if I think about it in the two big areas, sales and service, really what I think, and I think I've brought them up already, but to me, I think the easiest one is lead management, being able to have AI that can once again augment. We're not at the stage with AI, at least not from what our survey is showing or we're seeing, where AI is replacing any employees, right? This is more of that augmentation. So having that lead management tool where they can automatically, you don't have to rely on a salesperson. In fact, a little anecdote, we had one where a salesperson implemented Ava to be able to do lead management. And he got really annoyed because he said it made his dealers, his salespeople a little lazy. So you always have these unintended consequences.
Well, you got to balance it. Yeah, they're going to adapt and become better. Like I find myself using Chat GPT in like, so many things I do daily now. It just saves me time, right? It's incredible because it makes me more efficient. I could choose to do less work. I don't want to do that. But in all seriousness, I mean, it just does make you more efficient. So
yeah, it augments, right? It doesn't take you away. You're still doing the work. You're still in there. You're still the input in there. It just helps augment your everyday life. And it's only going to get smarter and help you more. I think on the service side, really having that ability to engage with it, and not just the good thing about something like AI and something like Ava is, I can pick up the phone. I think I'm fairly personable. I get on the phone, I'll talk to someone, I can handle a customer problem. Something like AI can have data at a fingertip that I'm not going to have, right? My memory isn't quite what it used to be. I'll be able to remember your name after this, but I'm not so good on names after. They're going to remember who you are exactly when your car got last serviced, whether it got serviced someone else. There are actually, the one neat thing about AI these days, and Ava can do it, is it's called customer sentiment. So even, it can tell, are you having a bad day? Are you using the language that, this isn't necessarily someone that's in a buying mode? How do I then use my language? It'll give you suggested replies, which I wish I could have in my everyday life these days, suggested replies to get someone kind of over the corner and get them a little more in the buying mood. So there's really a lot it can do. It doesn't take away that, face to face and the customer. Like I said, we really are seeing it augmenting, but those are two kind of great examples. The other point I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned it, and I know you come from a dealership background. One thing that I've always been fascinated on, because as I mentioned, I've been doing kind of data integration for far too long now. But in the Fortella space, we have such a gamut. There are dealers that I have to explain what an API is, right? And to them, just like I do to my parents, I'm like, it's super simple. Think of it as a Lego block. It's just something that connects one thing to another. It's a fancy term for it. So for dealers on Fortellis, we have every dealer that's looking, yep, let me just go to the marketplace, just like you do on the iPhone store, and you're able to see all the apps that are available to you. But I have a subset of dealers that I talk to on an everyday basis, way more technically savvy than I am. And what I'm fascinated by what they do is they come up with their own ideas. And I like to say this, I'm like, everyone's got great ideas. No one has better ideas on how to solve a dealer's problem than a dealer, right? So we're using it to say, hey, you have this example, come in, you're tech savvy, create your own app, use that app for yourself or use your app for the dealership. So it is really, I do see the gamut. I'm always fascinated. Whenever I hear a dealer come to us with an app story, I want to hear what it is because I know they know what they're talking about.
One of my concerns is, obviously, our industry continues consolidating and there's fewer dealerships and more bigger groups. And it's for good reason. I mean, you could say, just again, due to the complexity of the industry and, running a dealership as, the game has changed. Plus, the internet has sort of democratized many things across the country and, inventory acquisition. I mean, a lot of things have changed and the market has become more efficient. My question to you is, do you see a big difference in AI usage between like smaller groups and bigger groups? I know I read one of your stats that about 2/3 of dealerships with sales volume of 500 plus units, I believe that's a month. It doesn't stay, but I believe you're stating a month here, are extremely familiar with AI. Pretty much, right? They're into it, right? They're probably leveraging it in some way. My question is, are smaller groups not taking advantage of this? Will they fall behind? Like, what's your sentiment on that in terms of usage based on dealership size, right? Do some dealers think, oh, maybe I'm too small to use this? Kind of what's the right or wrong answer here?
Yeah, it's a great point because I think the section you're talking about is actually where we merge a couple of our surveys, one we do called Trendsetters, which is really looking at the most successful dealers. Doesn't actually have to be the largest. Typically it is those that have kind of more of the IT resources, more willing to kind of go out and invest. But we do see those trendsetters, those tech forward folks, sometimes the larger ones adopting AI more than the smaller one. But I always say that the smaller one's still using it. They just may not be purposely thinking they're using it, going out and using an AI tool. I think with those larger groups too, the larger dealers, they have so much more of a business to run. If you're just a single point dealer, as I mentioned, South Dakota, you know exactly who it is and what they're doing. Being able to get the insights, being able to augment, just makes more of an impact on your business when you're a larger dealer versus a smaller. But going back to my story about how I love hearing when dealers come up with their own apps. You'd be surprised. In fact, the Digital Motorworks, the company
when you say your own apps, sorry, you're referring specifically to the Fortellis marketplace, which is part of the CDK suite of products where dealers are actually, again, like what you just explained, like an app store. They're literally choosing what they want, kind of a la carte, pick and choose what's going to bring value to your dealership.
Yeah. Where in that case, the dealer is creating your own app, right? So we think about the third party, CDK putting apps. These are dealers putting it on there. But we got the Digital Motorworks got its start because it was a dealer's son who wasn't in the business. He was just a tech guy. And he came up with this idea. Wouldn't it be great if there's a vehicle inventory kiosk? And it was a small dealership, right? So the point is just, it doesn't necessarily, the bigger folks get bigger impact because they're big, but you'll find the tech savvy and you'll find folks that are getting interested in it even at the smaller level. A lot of it comes down to the personnel specifically. I know plenty of dealers that are necessarily the large ones that you would think of that are on what we call our major users group. They're talking to me about data. They're talking to me about AI, talking about me about APIs in their own apps every day. So it's not necessarily just a big versus small. It's really those tech savvy. It just happens to be the big ones are usually more tech savvy.
This episode is brought to you by Dealer Pay. Are you tired of payment nightmares at your dealership? With most processors, you're stuck with confusing fees, outdated terminals, and robotic customer service. But Dealer Pay is here to change that. They offer modern point-of-sale software, unbeatable customer support, and transparent pricing, so you can say goodbye to payment surprises. Upgrade your dealership's payment system today with Dealer Pay and experience the difference. Visit dealer-pay.com to schedule a demo. Again, that's dealer-pay.com or click the link in the show notes below.
So before we move on, final question here regarding where are you seeing the most effectiveness within the dealerships? Like, can you stack rank sales, service, marketing, data analytics, whether internal data, right? Me understanding what's happening in my dealership or, data that's facing outwards, right? Which I guess would be marketing if you're taking that data and, you're cleaning it up, you're trying to tell a better, or bring a customer in with, specific offer that would kind of fall into marketing. But where are you seeing the most effectiveness overall from your perspective?
Yeah, according to our survey, the biggest impact that dealers are telling us really is number one is in sales. So they're seeing
Sales.
it in
It's the low hanging
example,
fruit. Yeah.
the lead management. Yeah, yeah, right. It's the easy one. The lead management, the propensity to buy, the suggested vehicle. That one, and it's also one that kind of carries over the most from other industries. So there's been a lot of kind of early adopters. So the sales, I think, is number one. Service comes at a quick number two. We had one dealer, I think, had said like they had a 78% interest in, we call it the Domino's pizza tracker, but just being able to, when your car's in the service, I think the number one call a dealer gets is my car ready? Is
What's
my car
going
ready?
on?
Right?
Yep.
I do that, right? But you can use AI to augment it. So if the dealer's saying 78% of the customer value can come from being able to have that automated up to date with a customer. Now, that doesn't necessarily directly translate to increased revenue for that customer, but what it does is increase the expectability of them being a return customer, which is where the revenue comes in to
Oh,
place.
yeah. They're a happier customer. They're going to come back.
Yeah, yeah. Service is a quick one after it. Marketing, yes, and I'm in the marketing space for CDK. We use it for some of our tools. I say it's a lagging number three, but I'd say sales number one, service second right now.
And then just from like a sneak peek perspective, obviously, you're part of CDK and you're working on constant products. And I have to imagine you're clearly, listening to the dealer and, some combination of bottoms up, tops down, but understand, okay, what are we building next, right? What is the next thing that we're going to put out there that's going to bring the most value? So what are you working on right now? Like, what is that next product that CDK is focused on? I know, maybe 6 to 12 months ago, when I spoke with the team, they were talking about a lot about the dealership experience platform, which was CDK's upgraded platform for dealerships, for the industry. So now I'm curious to know, like, what is there something that's part of that, or are you kind of thinking about something different? What's that next solution?
Yeah, a couple cool things that the team I work with have been working on. One is directly within that dealership experience platform. So a lot of what we've done for Ava is dealer customer focus, right? So we've talked about doing the lead management, doing the service, the vehicle tracker, doing the service appointment. What we're doing now, and I believe we're kind of the first in the industry, is kind of shifting it and kind of turning it back in and looking more at the dealer having access to it for their own needs. So it's Ava within the dealership experience platform. And what I mean by that is we just announced this at our CDK Connect event we held earlier this month or last month. I'm losing track of time. And what it is it is using Ava. I say you ask a simple question, you get a smart answer. So let's say you're a dealership principal. You're obviously very busy. You've got a lot of things you've got to be looking at. And what Ava can do is simply log in, and it's voice activated, voice return. It's a thing of Star Trek where you can just ask Ava, what's my gross profit for this month? Or how's my gross profit compare this month over last month? Or how many vehicles do I have in inventory? Like simple questions that ordinarily you would have to log in, you'd have to go to the right tool, you'd have to dig through a report to get it. But with Ava, that is responding directly to the dealer. You ask that question, it'll respond simply, $5 million or 200 vehicles in inventory. It'll give them the ability, if they want to dive deeper, to say, here's where we found this information. Click here and you could go into our intelligence suite, which is our analytics tool, or go into fixed ops suite if it's a fixed ops question. So we're really excited because now we're able to kind of take all that great goodness we've had helping dealers engage with the customers, and now we're helping it engage with our customers who are the dealers using it. So that's something really excited that we rolled out. The other area, because I don't want to talk just chatbots because chatbots isn't it with AI. The other thing that we're super excited about is using AI for predictive forecasting. So I think I mentioned Intelligence Suite, which is our analytics tool. We're now using AI, the machine learning, to be able to help those people using it better understand if I do that. We call it the what if. If I were to increase my marketing dollars in November, how's that going to translate to increased sales revenue, next month? And it's using their data, it's using real world data, it's using inputs for them that they, specifically want to have based on, here's what the real world is at my dealership. So it's going beyond just the spreadsheets and, hey, we made 5 million last time, we're going to make 6 million next time. It's saying, what if we tweaked this? What if we added an employee here? What if we took away an employee here? How does that affect it? So it's really exciting things you can do with AI, data modeling that we weren't able to do or even think of, just a few years ago.
Leigh Ann Conver, really appreciate your insights and just the work you're doing and, working with dealers to kind of uncover what's the latest and greatest in this space. Before we wrap up, any closing thoughts on your end?
Yeah, just a shout out. Everyone recognizes AI is important. AI is all around us. It's no longer science fiction. Believe me, if you don't think you're using AI, you are using AI. Just make sure you're doing it to solve your problems.
It's a good way to close it. And I will also make sure that we link your AI 2024 AI survey, which, was a survey really focused on all, dealership executives in the country. So we'll link that in the show notes below. If anyone wants to take a look through any of the insights, the stats we reference in this podcast and others, you can just click on that below and download it. Leigh Ann, thanks for coming on. It's been great.
Thanks for having me, Yossi.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.